Okay, so today we're diving into something I think a lot of people listening can relate to
Yeah,
journaling, but with a twist.
right.
You sent us these journal prompts
Yes.
from lestallion.com, and they're specifically designed for people with ADHD.
And that's what makes it really interesting, right? Because it's not just, your typical, like, what did I eat today kind of
Yeah.
prompts. These are designed to really help uncover
Yeah.
some of those unique strengths and challenges that people with ADHD experience.
Exactly, because it's one thing to like keep a journal just to, get
Yeah.
things out.
Yeah,
But it's another thing to have prompts that can actually help you understand your brain better.
totally.
And this blog post from April 2024,
Yeah.
it seems to be right on the pulse of this whole movement to reframe ADHD.
Yeah.
Not as a deficit, but as a different way of thinking.
Exactly. It's less about fixing and more about understanding, right? And how can we work with the way that your brain naturally operates?
So how does this blog post, 50 journal prompts for those living with ADHD Listallion, how does it approach this?
So it breaks the pumps down into 5 different categories.
Right.
And each of these categories kind of tackles a different aspect of the ADHD experience.
Right.
So it's really like a toolbox, and you can pick and choose what really speaks to you.
I like that, having options.
Yeah.
So walk us through these categories.
Got
What are
it.
we dealing with here?
So first up, you've got daily reflections. And this is all about building self-awareness.
Okay.
Things like your energy levels throughout the day, or when do you feel like you hit that sweet spot of focus?
Right.
Maybe what are some small victories that happen that you might not even notice?
That's a good point about small victories with ADHD. Sometimes just getting out of bed can feel like a win.
Absolutely, those wins matter.
Yeah.
Then you've got challenges.
Okay.
And this is really encouraging you to kind of face those ADHD-related difficulties head on, but in a constructive way.
Sounds kind of like a judgment-free zone.
Yes.
To be real with yourself about what's tough.
Exactly, because stigma thrives in silence.
Right.
And so the more we understand ourselves and openly acknowledge, the challenges,
Yeah.
the better we can kind of combat those misconceptions out in the world.
Makes sense. So what's next?
Next up is management strategies, and this is where I think it gets really practical.
Okay.
It's about ditching that one-size-fits-all advice
Yeah.
and really discovering what works for you.
Okay, so less about trying to fit into someone else's box and more about building your own personalized toolkit.
Exactly. Then we've got personal growth, and this category is all about shifting that focus from limitations to strengths.
Okay.
Really taking the time to celebrate those achievements, big and small,
Yeah.
and really recognizing the unique way that your ADHD brain contributes to your awesomeness.
I'm sensing a theme here of really embracing what makes you you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, we have mindfulness in ADHD. And this one I think is really important because it's often overlooked.
Yeah, I was going to say, we hear so much about mindfulness in general, but I don't often see it specifically connected to ADHD.
Right. But incorporating mindfulness practices can be such a game changer for focus and emotional regulation, especially with ADHD. It's like providing your brain with an extra set of tools to navigate the chaos.
It's like you're giving your brain that instruction manual it can actually use
That's a great way to put it.
instead of trying to force it to work on somebody else's terms.
Exactly. So are you ready to dive into some of these prompts and see how they work in action?
Let's get specific. What's one that jumps out at you?
Okay, so in the daily reflections category, there's one that seems really simple, but I think it packs a punch. How did you feel when you completed a task today?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Why is that one so powerful?
So it really comes down to tapping into your brain's reward system.
Okay.
When we complete a task, our brain releases dopamine, and that gives us that feeling of pleasure and accomplishment.
Right.
And that encourages us to repeat the behavior.
So it's like positive reinforcement for our brains.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Research suggests that for individuals with ADHD, there might be some differences in those reward pathways.
Interesting.
So sometimes that immediate sense of reward, that dopamine hit, might be less intense or shorter lived.
Oh, okay.
So by actually taking the time to tune into those positive feelings, even if they're subtle,
Right.
we're kind of giving our brains a little extra boost.
So we're sort of consciously acknowledging those wins, even if they seem small.
Exactly. And over time, that can actually help rewire those reward pathways,
Wow.
making it easier to stay motivated and complete those tasks.
That's really cool. I can see how that would be helpful.
Okay, give me another one.
All right, how about this one from the challenges category? What misconceptions about ADHD bother you the most?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's funny because I feel like even just the way we talk about ADHD, sometimes can perpetuate some of those misconceptions.
Exactly.
Right.
And this prompt is really encouraging you to challenge those narratives.
Yeah,
It's about reclaiming your story and deciding, what ADHD means to you.
totally. It makes me think about that quote from the blog post that we talked about earlier where it says, ADHD isn't a deficit of attention, but a different way of thinking.
Yes. That's such a
Right.
key takeaway from this whole piece. It's really about reframing ADHD, not as a disorder that needs to be fixed, but just a different way of experiencing the world.
And that difference can come with its own set of strengths.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, people with ADHD are often bursting with creativity.
They can be hyper-focused when they're passionate about something. They're adaptable. They think outside the box. They bring a fresh perspective to everything they do.
Yeah, it's like flipping the script on what it means to have an ADHD brain.
Exactly.
Okay, I love it. What else have we got in this treasure trove of prompts?
There's one from the mindfulness and ADHD category that I think is particularly powerful. Describe a peaceful place where you like to relax and clear your mind.
Yeah, I can see where that'd be really helpful.
It's about creating that mental escape hatch.
Right, like a reset button for your brain.
Exactly. So when things start to feel overwhelming, you can just return to that image in your mind and it can bring a sense of calm and focus.
It's like these prompts aren't even just about writing. They're like little thought experiments for your brain.
That's a great way to put it. They're springboards for deeper self-discovery.
This has been really eye-opening. I'm so glad we're talking about this.
It's interesting how this blog post tackles like a potentially complex topic in such an approachable way.
I agree. The tone is really encouraging.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like having a supportive friend kind of cheering you on as you're writing,
It really captures that spirit of embracing your neurodiversity.
which is so important because ADHD is not a one-size-fits-all experience.
Exactly. That's the beauty of journaling. It gives you that personalized space for exploration.
Yeah.
You can figure out what works for you.
No judgment, just self-discovery.
Exactly. And speaking of discovery, for those listening who are ready to kind of embark on their own journaling journey, where can they find this incredible list of prompts?
Right, let's give them the details.
You can find the full blog post, 50 Journal Prompts for Those Living with ADHD Listallion, over at listallion.com.
Perfect. We'll make sure to include that link in the show notes as well.
Awesome. And remember, you don't need anything fancy to journal. Just grab a notebook, your phone, even a napkin if that's all you've got, and just start jotting down your thoughts.
It's about the process, not perfection.
Love that. Okay, now before we wrap up, you always leave us with something to ponder.
I do, don't I? Well, we've talked a lot about reframing ADHD, right?
Yeah.
Seeing those so-called weaknesses as potential strengths.
Yeah, flipping the script.
So my question for you, dear listener, is this: what's one thing that you previously saw as a weakness, maybe even something people have told you, is a negative part of your ADHD that you could reframe as a strength through journaling?
It's like turning those what ifs into what if I could.
Precisely. Because oftentimes those very traits that make us feel different are the ones that, when harnessed, effectively become our greatest assets.
So true. Well, on that note of empowerment, we wrap up this deep dive into the world of ADHD journaling. A huge thank you to you for sharing your insights and to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. Remember, your brain is capable of amazing things, and with a little self-compassion and a whole lot of journaling, you can unlock its full potential.